Today we're going to talk to you a little bit about the different types of RV batteries and what features are important, but more importantly we're going to talk about how to monitor those batteries and know how much juice you have left so you're not left in the dark.
Literally. We see online a lot about people taking their brand new RV out for the very first time, and maybe they're dry camping or boondocking for an overnight stay on the way to their destination.
Maybe a harvest host or a boondocker's welcome.
Right, and they wake up the next day and their batteries are dead.
Yeah,
Or they
or they wake up freezing because their batteries are dead and their furnace died.
Yeah.
And the fact is that most RVs, particularly trailers like ours, are going to come with a standard cheap battery that's crap. So we're going to talk a little bit about the different types of batteries because you're going to want to upgrade your batteries. But more importantly, we're going to talk about how to monitor that.
Was it an option for us to upgrade the batteries when we ordered the RV?
Yes and no. You can probably get a battery upgrade from your dealer. You're not going to find that on Grand Design's website because the RV manufacturers aren't typically the ones putting the batteries in, it's the dealer.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah, we did buy our first set of Trojan T105s from Lazy Days.
Oh, we did?
We did.
Oh, okay.
But they didn't install them. We just bought them and gave them to us because I wanted to wire them. Unless you are going to never, ever dry camp, you're going to go from RV park to RV park and always be on full hookups, you're going to want a better battery. And you're also going to want to monitor that battery, and that's the focus of today's video.
This is not going to be an everything you need to know about RV batteries video.
Yeah, that could be probably an hour-long video by itself. In fact,
we're not opposed to.
Yeah. In fact, Jared from All About RVs has an excellent video that covers all the different types of batteries and goes into great detail on that, and we'll link that below. That's a great resource to have. We're going to talk a little bit about the types of batteries and some of the key numbers you're going to want to know in relation to monitoring your batteries, just so we have the right verbiage as we talk about the battery monitor. Mainly we're going to focus on what you can run and how long you can run it.
Wait, hold on. Daisy's growling. She sees something.
You got...
I hope you guys can hear that. What's out there? If you're new to our channel and you've never seen our mascot, just Daisy. She's fierce and she was growling at the mean, vicious hikers outside the window.
3.5 pounds of ferocity.
That's right. Okay. Anyhow.
What kind of battery is best?
And what can you run on those specific batteries?
Right, and most importantly, the things you want to run, how long can you run them? How much do you have left? How much time? How much juice? When are the lights going to go out?
Yeah.
Because that happens a lot, particularly with a furnace that draws quite a bit of juice. Every RV has two full electrical systems, an AC and a DC side. Your AC side is going to be things like your microwave, your TV, your coffee, toaster ovens, toasters, hair dryers, things like that.
We get it.
Yeah. We're going to focus on the DC side, which is direct current. And that comes from your batteries or your inverter converter. The DC system covers things like your lights, your hydraulic system, your control system, probably your radio, all of your controls for like your refrigerator, even on your air conditioning. Typically the AC system itself is running off of AC. Don't get those two confused. But the little control box to turn it on and off is running off of DC. So you really got to have both. But when you're dry camping and you're not connected to anything, it's just DC power. And we're not going to go into inverters. We have a separate video on that. That converts DC to AC so you can run everything. We're going to focus on the DC side only. Your batteries are your only source of power when you're dry camping. You know, obviously you have a generator, shore power, those are other things.
What about solar?
That's a good question. Solar doesn't run anything. That's kind of a misconception that kind of pervades online. Oh, I can run this off solar, I can run that off solar.
So does solar charges the battery?
Exactly. Exactly.
See, I learn as we read.
We don't have solar, but if we had solar panels, they run through a controller and the voltage and current are variable depending on the sun. It's a very unreliable, unsteady source of power, but it can charge your batteries as the power is available, but you're still going to run everything from your battery. So that's the key.
Yeah, we would love to have solar. We will eventually have solar. It's just expensive.
And a lot of work. Another quick note on the batteries we're going to discuss, we're strictly going to talk about house batteries. House batteries are what run the house. Your Class C's, your Class A's are typically going to have two separate battery banks, one for the coach and one for the house. The coach is to start your engine and do all that engine stuff. We are going to talk a little bit about the types of batteries and how much they can discharge in just a little bit. But first we're going to go through some other numbers. First up is voltage. I mentioned it's all a 12 volt system. Most RVs are 12 volt, maybe a few exceptions here and there, but we're going to focus on 12 volt. Batteries will typically come in 6 or 12 volt, and those can be wired in such a way that they make 12 volts. You put two 6 volts in series and it makes a 12 volt. Again, see Jared's video for details on that. We're just going to be dealing with some type of 12 volt battery bank. I like to think of voltage, I use an analogy of water and water pressure when it comes to electricity. Voltage is kind of like your water pressure. It's like you've got a big tub of water, the more full that tub of water is, the more pressure you're going to have at the bottom. Okay. And that's really what voltage is. It's electrical pressure, electrical potential.
Well, the higher the number of voltage on the battery is, the more pressure?
Yeah. So while we're not going to go into a lot of detail on this because there are other resources for it and we don't want this to be a 90-minute video, is when you wire two batteries in series, those voltages will add. So two 6 volts in series, you'll have 12 volts. When you wire batteries in parallel, the voltages do not add, but the current adds, or the potential current or the amp hours add together, and we're going to get into that in just a minute.
Okay.
Speaking of current, that's our next topic. One of the ratings you'll have on a deep cycle battery is its maximum current that it can sustain without overheating or having a problem. Back to our water and water tank analogy, this is analogous to gallons per minute. How many gallons per minute can this tank provide and not blow up, right? So, and this is going to become a factor when you talk about what you can run, that kind of stuff. Amp hours is a rating of how much power over how much time you can supply. Let's take a good example, it's easy math, of a 100 amp hour battery. A 100 amp hour battery is rated that way at 20 hours, meaning it's been tested that it can supply 5 amps of power for 20 hours. That's 100 amp hours, 5 times 20. Okay. It could also do 1 amp for 100 hours, or 100 amps for 1 hour, or 200 amps for half an hour. Gotcha. So it's all just a math thing. And again, that 200 amps for half an hour, probably not. That's just a theoretical thing. Most batteries, like even our Battleborns, which we're going to get to, are rated at 100 amps total. So you can do 100 amps solid for 1 hour. Using this math, you can also kind of reverse it, and you can figure out how much stuff you need to run and how long you need to run it. That will tell you how many amp hours you need. If I want to run a 50 amp device for 10 hours straight, I know I'm going to need a 500 amp hour battery bank. Okay. Another key factor about your battery's amp hour rating is that's its rating to 0. And depending on the battery type, which we're about to get into, that's usually not
it doesn't go
the
down
real,
to 0.
Yeah,
right.
The real amp hours. When you're talking about flooded cell batteries and AGM, it's usually 50% of that. So you might buy a 100 amp hour battery thinking, ooh, I got 100 amp hours, when in reality, you've only got 50. But we're going to get into that right now.
It doesn't really make any sense. It doesn't. I mean, why put it on there then?
Because it sells batteries.
But that's false advertising.
Well, it's the real rating of the battery. It's up to the consumer to know the type of battery they're getting, how much of that they can actually discharge.
This is why I don't get into this stuff. It was all making sense until you're like, but that's not really what it is.
Well, it is if you've got lithium-ion Battleborn. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about battery types.
Okay.
Yes. You've got basic flooded cell. That's almost like a standard car battery. It's got a liquid electrolyte that does have to be maintained. As those batteries charge, they do off-gas hydrogen and oxygen, and they have to be sealed and vented because of that. While those are your least expensive option, they're also going to be your heaviest and the highest maintenance.
Is that what we had first?
That's what we had first. Okay. When we first started out, we got 4 Trojan T105 6 volts, and they were wired in series and parallel. That's what we had initially.
And I remember it was sealed and vented and all that stuff.
And it was very heavy.
Yeah.
And I had to put supports underneath. It was a pain, but it was our least expensive option, and it was what we could afford at the time.
And it did okay.
Yeah, it did great. Another type of battery that you'll see is called AGM, or absorbed glass mat, or sometimes just called glass mat batteries. And it is a sealed battery, does not require any maintenance, which is good.
I've never heard of that before.
Yeah, it's
I mean, shocker, I know,
Yeah.
but sorry, go ahead.
So those are still going to be heavy, but they're not going to require any maintenance, and they are going to be a little bit more expensive than your flooded cell. So it's kind of a one notch up from your flooded cell. Now, one thing to remember about both AGM and flooded cell, I mentioned the flooded cell off gases, so does AGM. So both of those types of batteries have to be sealed and vented. And the other key thing about flooded cell and AGM is they can realistically only be discharged to 50%. So that's something to keep in mind when you're using these batteries. If you go below 50, it's okay, but the further you go down, the more you risk damaging them. If you went down past 80%, you can pretty much chuck the thing. It's probably no good. If you go down to 0, if you're camping in your RV overnight and your battery goes boom all the way to the floor, it's a goner.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a goner. So this is why you want to be able to monitor your batteries. You don't want to just run your batteries, oh, we'll just run them till they're dead. You know, it's not like a Duracell 9 volt that, you know, you're just going to chuck. The third type of battery we're going to talk about is lithium, sometimes called LiFePO4, which is lithium iron phosphate. Your lithium batteries are your best batteries, but they're also the most expensive, which is why we didn't buy them initially. The cool thing about lithium is you can take those things all the way down to 0. In most cases, check with the manufacturer. Battleborns are rock solid. Another thing about most lithium ion batteries is they're going to have a battery management system, or a BMS, built into each battery. And that is like a little brain inside there that shuts off your battery if it's too cold, shuts off your battery if it's too hot, stops the outflow of current before it gets too high. It protects that battery and also balances the cells. They're really, really good, but they are really expensive.
Yeah.
If you want to do what we did, we bought some flooded cells for our first year, and then we upgraded to Battleborn.
Which we did pay for ourselves.
Yes.
Just no partnership there. So.
We'll have a link below to our Amazon page. That's an affiliate link. But yeah, we paid for our Battleborns, and yes, they're expensive. And again, 0 maintenance with lithium. You just put them in there. Oh, and they're super light. Way. They're like a third or a quarter of the weight of their equivalent. And I'm making that number up, but they're super light. So let's talk about monitoring your batteries and how you can tell how much is left. What percentage are you? Are you at 150, whatever? Our RV came...
I'm gonna get out of the way.
Okay.
This is all you anyhow.
Our RV came with this LCI1 control, and in here I can see our battery voltage. And generally in a new RV, your voltage is the only indication you have of how charged your batteries are.
So is that like what you were talking about with the water and the tank and the voltage and stuff?
Yeah, exactly. So if you go back to our analogy of the water tank and the water pressure, if that water tank is full, you're going to have maximum pressure down at the bottom. And if the water tank is half empty, then you're going to have less pressure. So that's really your only way to know. And if you go out and Google battery charge percentage by voltage, you'll see some charts out there that say, based on the type of battery, this voltage is your 100% and 75 and 50. But again, there's nothing that's super accurate about that voltage because of a couple of things. A, this system right here is hooked up who knows where on this whole DC system. It's certainly not connected directly to the batteries. Also, DC systems in an RV are always in use. So when you have a system that's pulling current, the voltage is going to drop even though it might really be higher. So it's never an accurate measurement unless you shut everything off and measure it at your batteries, which you're never going to do unless you have a problem and you need to see what's going on. But most of your RVs, particularly your fifth wheels and trailers and toy haulers, you're just going to have some kind of system like this to see the voltage, and that's it. So the only way to really truly know what's going in and out of your battery and how much has been used and how much is left is with a shunted battery monitor. That is key. And the thing is with that is there's a shunt that sits between the negative side of your battery bank and everything else. So it acts like not really a traffic cop because it's not going to stop anything, but it can watch and monitor all of the traffic in and out of your battery bank and know exactly how much has been used, how much is left, and give you a very, very accurate representation of your battery condition. So let's go outside and I will show you our shunt and how I've got it wired out there. We have a few changes up here probably since the last time we filmed. First off, you can see we have 3 Battleborns in series. Positive, 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 negative, negative, negative. If you are familiar with the front of these, there's quite a bit different up here. This guy right here is the biggest thing. You'll notice the wires coming out of it. One of them is just a sensor for the positive side, and the other is isolating the entire thing. So here's the big thing with this. When you get an RV and whatever battery they put in it, it's probably going to have everything connected to the battery bank. So your generator start, your 50 amp bus, the hydraulic systems, whatever else it was connected right to the battery system is going to be connected right to the batteries. And to be able to properly monitor via a shunt, at least the things that are on the negative side of the battery have to all come off onto a bus. And that's what we have right here. You can see that the negative side of the battery here has nothing else on it, just a temperature sensor. And that goes straight to here. And then every other thing that was on the battery bank is now on that bus. Key thing about the bus, it has to be rated for the highest amperage you're going to pull. These are rated for 600 amps, which is way more. And even though I didn't need to, you'll see that I also did the same thing with the positive side of the battery bank, except it goes through a cutoff switch before it goes to the bus bar. That way I can have a cutoff directly connected to the batteries that I know when I shut that off, there's no DC power anywhere in the RV. Even though the RV comes with its own cutoff switch, it's further down the line and doesn't isolate things like the hydraulic system. Another note about the way I have this wired, if you watch some of our other wiring install videos, you know I had a really tough time getting the wires to that front cabinet. So I waited until I was doing our new surge guard before I reran that wire. And that's this wire right here. And you can see that it goes up and that goes to the cabinet that we showed you on the inside. Now, the cool thing about this BMV-712 is since it's Bluetooth, if you don't want to run the wires, just leave it in here. Mount it somewhere. I think for about 6 months or so, I had it just laying in here and I would connect to it via the app. The advantage to having it up here versus inside is that I could reach it from the truck. And we like to travel with our propane off and use our inverter to power the fridge. And that way I could keep an eye on the batteries while we were driving. Now I have to wait till we stop and get out and then I'll check them. So the advantage is it's nice and convenient to have the control panel right there. I don't have to get the app out if I just want to walk by and look at it. Disadvantage is that the Bluetooth doesn't reach it from the truck now. So just a real quick, in case you're curious about the other stuff in here. Obviously you can see 3 Battleborns, but the other things that I've done in here are the separate 80 amp breaker for the hydraulics. We've got a blog post on that. We also talk about it in our hydraulic video. And everything up here, that's all for the inverter. This is a high amperage fuse. Those go right over to here, and this is the inverter. And you can see both the DC and AC sides to that. Again, not an inverter video, but do check out that video. And that's all we really had to show you up here. I've got plenty of room up here if I want to add. I could probably rearrange these and get 3 more up here to have 600 amp hours, which we want to do eventually, just because it's so nice to have that extra power, that extra capacity when you're boondocking, and not have to worry about it on travel days and things like that. So you can see the install is really not that complicated. The most difficult part is going to be getting everything off of the negative blocks and onto a bus bar so that you can put the shunt in, and then of course running that cable. We ran ours up here. In regards to configuring it, it's really pretty simple. As soon as you power it up and use the app, It'll ask you like what type of battery, what the amp hours are. The rest it pretty much figures out. If you're confused about any of the parameters, reach out to Victron. They were great. I had a couple questions for them. They helped me out. They'll help you out. Let's get to a quick little demo of how this thing works. I've shut off outside power, so the AC is off. It's a little bit warm. Let me fire up the Victron Connect here. The first thing you'll see is that we have a device list. This means you can control more than one Victron component, more than one battery monitor. If you wanted to have all kinds of battery banks and put them all in here, you could do that. But we've got one, so we're going to go into there. And we can see right now my batteries are at 99%. My voltage is 13.22, just went to 2.1. The current coming out of the batteries is right around 24 amps, which equates to 314 watts. Watts is just amps times voltage. It's kind of a good way to talk about power, whether you're talking about 12 volts DC or 120 volts AC. Wattage is wattage. So that's kind of why sometimes you'll see watt hours on batteries versus amp hours, but usually they're rated in amp hours. So you can see that our inverter is running. Right now, the inverter is saying it's pulling about 1 amp. But I can see on the battery it's pulling much more than that. And that is what the inverter is pulling. The rest of the draw that we see in that 24 amps are lights, the refrigerator's on propane, just RV stuff running. And you can see at this current level, we would last for 11 hours and 25 minutes. Let's turn on some things and see what we get. I'm going to start with the fridge because we usually run that on travel day. So right now it's on propane. I am going to switch it to auto, which will actually detect that we've got power, and it'll switch to AC. Looks like it just switched. We are currently pulling 72, 73-ish amps from the batteries. And you'll notice that my time remaining is going down. It's starting to adjust. I'm not sure exactly how far back, what kind of average it uses, but you'll see that when you change the draw on the batteries, this does take a few minutes to kind of recognize it and give you a new estimate. We can see on the inverter that we're now pulling 52 amps. That's, of course, now supplying power to our refrigerator. And it's starting to level out now. You can see we're going to last probably a little bit less than 5 hours, maybe 4 hours, 45 minutes-ish. And therein lies the problem sometimes on our travel day is we have to keep an eye on this and make sure we don't drain them all the way down. We can do that, it's not going to hurt them, but we want to have at least enough DC power to power the fridge on propane. So we kind of keep an eye on that. We do want to add more batteries. Right now what we do is when we stop for lunch or something, we kick on the generator, charge the batteries back up, and voila. Lunch break at a truck stop. So this is what we do sometimes. We get all the way to the left side of the stop, put this slide out. That way we've got all this room here. We've got the generator running to charge the batteries back up for the remainder of our drive to run our refrigerator.
We got some healthy quinoa food.
Healthy food.
Healthy food.
A lot of people want to know how much juice does the AC pull? Can you run your AC off the inverter? And yeah, we can. Let's do it. I'm going to turn the fridge back on propane. Let's kick on the AC and see it really start drawing some amps. So that initially was just the fan. Now the compressor just kicked on. The inverter is now drawing about 145-ish, 144 amps. And I can see coming out of my batteries is about 160 amps. And you can do some math in your head, 160 amps, 300 amp hours, it's going to be less than 2 hours that the AC will run, but it will run. Another key note here about your battery bank. I mentioned that I had 3 Battleborns in parallel. Each one of those Battleborns can provide 100 amps of continuous power. In parallel, it's 300 amps total. But if I only had one Battleborn with 100 amp hours, this would not be possible. I'm pulling 155 amps. The battery would say no. So I got to have at least 2 batteries to be able to supply that kind of amperage. If you think about the maximum that our inverter can supply, it's a 3,000 watt inverter. 3,000 divided by 12 is 250. So if my inverter is maxed out at 3,000 watts, it's pulling 250 amps from the battery. So when you're sizing things like an inverter is probably going to be the biggest draw. But if you've got some big DC appliances, oh, let's try running the furnace and see how many amps that pulls. So the furnace runs off of DC to power the fan, just kicked on. Running the furnace, we are only pulling 30 amps. Well, that's not too bad. We were pulling 24 before. The inverter is back to drawing just 2 amps for, you know, the clock on the microwave and computers. So the furnace is only drawing about 30 amps. Let me turn the furnace off now. Furnace just shut off finally, and we're drawing roughly 23 amps. You can see the furnace, we were drawing like 30, so it's about 7 amps. It wasn't too bad. That's the cool thing about this battery monitor, is it monitors everything. If you know your furnace is 7 amps and you think, oh, well, I'll just divide 300 by 7 and I'll know how many hours I can run the furnace. Well, the problem is lots of other stuff is using it. Lights. Right now we're using 23 amps. Let's turn off some lights and see how much those use. Those were all the lights we had on, and we're still drawing about 15 amps. That was what, about 9 amps, all that stuff? Turn that stuff back on. The bottom line is, I know exactly what's going into or out of the batteries. I know exactly how long it's gonna last based on that current load, and I know exactly how many amp hours I have left. So it's really, really cool to have that information. When you're looking at just voltage, it's a guessing game. It's like, I don't know. You can't tell how much is being drawn out just by looking at your voltage. So a couple of other quick notes about features that are on this. I can set sock alarms, which are state of charge alarms, and I can have this notify me when my battery percentage gets to a certain level. I can say, hey, when it gets to 25%, wake me up. I want to know, I want to go check my furnace, whatever. So that's really the gist of it. I know we went through a lot of little things to get to the monitoring piece, but we wanted to give you a base for that. And we've really liked having this battery monitor. And the thing to keep in mind is when you're looking at your time remaining, remember that's based on your current draw. It's not magic or psychic. It doesn't know what you're going to be using in the future, but it can tell you based on what's currently going on how long your batteries are going to last. And honestly, a shunted battery monitor is the only way to do that.
If you are planning on doing any kind of boondocking or dry camping, you should get yourself a shunted battery monitor for sure.
Absolutely. Whatever kind of battery you have, this system will monitor it down to the electron.
Ooh, fancy.
That's it.
Thanks for watching.
Bye.
Sorry. Okay.
So the biggest thing we want to cover is how you can get the information to Daisy.
All
let's
right.
Close that door.
You know, it's cute and all, but you know, we're trying to film. Okay, we forgot to dog-proof this video. Okay, all right. Take 3.
The advantage to having it up here versus inside.
Noisy campers.
Are they like right behind us? You know, we haven't had anybody behind us for days.
Well, that's what happens when we start to film.
We're filming
even inside and we're still getting noise. Okay.
So
it was family photo time outside of our RV.
I say we throw on some Metallica or just some death metal. Let's get some seether going.
I think they're going to be leaving soon.
And of course there's an airplane going over right now. So we'll wait for that. I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is. As soon as we film somewhere, something noisy happens every time.
Daisy. He does look like a crotchety old man right now. You kids, get off my lawn! But I think they're yelling because they're trying to get
the kids excited.
Excited to smile and stuff. No.
Hey.
I don't think that I've moved much.
Why not? You don't like being close to me?
No, I said I don't think I've moved that much from my position.
It's similar to a flooded cell. Oh, wait. Go back. An AGM down here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right, you gotta start over because you burped.
I know. Most of your better batteries, like Battleborn, try to say that. Better batteries, Battleborn. They're super light, and yeah, that was great.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Unless you're talking about like a $400 tiffin.
$400 tiffin?
$400.
I'll take a $400 tiffin all day.
Okay, I'll do that over.
Right outside our RV.
Who would think in this giant park,
Campground.
right on the back of our RV, is a whole family of people going, woo!